Hello, everyone. All right. I was just testing my audio. Making sure that everyone can hear me. Yeah, so I have been building this Webpart. I do SharePoint framework development, and I have been building this Webpart. But didn't use that, but okay. I don't know. I'm starting to think that maybe more entertaining would be game development, and I was actually reading up on game development today. So I think this will be the project that I do on here, and then I'm gonna try some development. I watched the video today where they talked about phaser, and so phaser is a gaming engine that you can build games using JavaScript and TypeScript, which is right up my alley. So excuse me. I'm gonna consider that. Maybe that's something we can try next. But apparently you can build React. You can build games within the templates, within these following templates. And I have familiarity with a lot of them. React, Vue, Vite, Webpack, to name a few. And so maybe I might give that a shot. You never know. You have to see, you have to join and watch the stream. Maybe we can give this a shot. I was actually thinking that one of the cool things that I would love to do is build a game based on the old Jetpack DOS game that I remember from when I was a kid. Not that, sorry. So yeah, so this is a game that we can build. I think that would be really cool. So we can paste this here. Basically, the objective of the game is you have a jetpack, you have a certain amount of fuel that you can use, which obviously is limited. And then you fly around collecting all these gems. And then there's this robot that is basically flying around trying to kill you. So I think that'd be a pretty cool or neat little trial that we can try utilizing this gaming engine. Since it's a 2D engine, I did read up on Unity, and I think it's called Unreal Engine or something like that. But those seem a little bit more advanced, and I mean, hold on, stop, please. Like I said, that seems a little bit more advanced, and I believe it uses C++, which I'm not all that familiar with. I'm familiar with C#, which some of them actually do leverage C#, but I don't know. Maybe something that I could consider in the future. But right now, I think I'm gonna try to finish working on the web part that I've been working on for the last few days. We've made a lot of great changes to it. So yeah, I think this would be a good point to try to change things. So So this one had, and we had a bug. Let's go ahead and continue on the development here. So one of the issues that this had is like, you saw me take away these question marks at the end of the question field, and when I go to submit, it's not taking them off, and that is because the state of the question is not being updated. So I need to find the question form, which I'm assuming is here under content bar, I think. So let's go look and see where we could find that. Maybe it's not under content bar. Maybe it's under question answer. Let's go look at question answer. Let's just type it here. Question answer is our component that we have been working on. And where are we? Here, the FAQ form uses submit FAQ form, and let's go look at what that does. So when we update when we run an update here on the data, it's not updating the item. What do we need to update the item? We will need update. There's got to be something for update question. Let's go look. Add question to topic, add topic, edit topic. We don't have an edit question in there. So let's go look at the store. So we have an add topic and we have an edit topic. We need to have an edit question. We have an add question and we remove question, but we don't have edit question. So we don't need to define it as in topic because technically the questions are part of their own list. And subsequently, they would have their own identifier, their own ID. So it stands to reason that we would just need to I guess we actually edit question in topic. And yes, it's going to receive the topic ID and the question itself. Yeah, so right here. I might change this because I'm not sure I agree with this methodology. Because let's go look at the question answer and FAQ item does contain ID. So technically we don't need to. Yeah, let's change. I don't like the way this is working at all. Let's change this. So let's go back up to the top. And we just basically need the question. And then since we have the question and the question as an identifier, we can go to here and say edit question topic. Oh, wait. We can't do it that way. Let me illustrate. So we know, I think this is called a scaly draw. Yeah. Let's look at this. All right. So we know we have an FAQ item, and the FAQ item contains an ID. But we also have a topic. Let's just make this a little bit smaller. And so this has a child. Let's move this down a little bit. So this is obviously an ID. All right. And then this is going to be an FAQ item. Okay. So this FAQ item has an ID, and what also happens is this topic also contains an ID. Okay. So we have this parent-child relationship between the topic and the and if I'm not mistaken, let's go look at the back end. This is what happens when you take a break for too long and you don't remember your own list setup. So we go here to site contents, and we go to our FAQ list. So the FAQ list has a parent ID. Okay, so this FAQ item right here also contains a parent ID. And so that parent ID is linked back to this ID. The problem is that what I was trying to do in my original assessment is I thought that I could just use the FAQ item since it contains an ID. Everything would be great. But what's happening now is that I have a nested object. And so when you have a nested object, it becomes, instead of becoming this, where we have things separate, how do I change this? Okay. Now what happens is, actually, let's just do this. When you have a nested object, you have this, and then you have this. And you see how they're nested now? So now I can't just go in here and I can't just go in there and say, you know what, I have the identifier of the question. Let me just go and update the question. We can't do that. Because now we first have to identify the topic and then target the ID. So GitHub Copilot, unfortunately, to my dismay here, I have to take the L and say that it was right all along. So I'm taking the L that I was wrong. All right. So now we got to change this. And the reason I didn't want it to be done this way, the way that GitHub Copilot is telling me to do it, I'll explain to you why that is not the way I wanted it to be done. Because the way that this is set up is it has to go into each and every topic. Let me adjust my camera. So it has to go into each and every topic and it has to iterate through every one of them using the map method. So then let's say you have several of these. Okay, I mean, is there a way to zoom out? Yep, zoom out. So now we have several of these. Okay. And they're all inside this thing called a configuration object. All right. The problem is, right? So this is called the configuration object. The problem is now that you have to check, okay, let's look at the first topic. Are you the topic I need? Nope. Move on to the next one. Are you the topic I need? Nope. Move on to the next one. And you see that that's not ideal, honestly. That's not the way you want to program. Because in this scenario, it's okay. It's acceptable. Because there's a high likelihood that you're not going to have a bunch of questions. Or a bunch of topics. But imagine that you did. Imagine that you had 1,000 topics. Imagine you had like thousands of topics. So in the event that you had something like that, you would have to re-engineer your solution. You'd have to re-engineer your solution to be able to work any more in an advanced manner. Okay. And so that is where I, would consider redoing the architecture. But given the fact that this is just a web part, it doesn't have a whole ton of questions, and I don't foresee it having a ton of questions or a ton of topics. I don't think that we would have that issue here. So that's why here I would say we can now leverage the edit question and topic and bring it in down here. Edit question and topic. And utilize the parent ID. Wait, what is... Oh, data is FAQ item. And so let's go to look at app props. So FAQ item has parent ID. So this we could use that data parent ID. ID would be the parent topic. This should fix our issue. So now let's go check it out. And actually, now that I'm really thinking about it, there might be another fix that I may have missed the other day because I didn't think to use that. And that is when we're updating. No, that one was a correct assessment. We were editing a topic but we had to find out if the topic was in the array. And here we still have to look for it in the array. If it is a selected question. And what do we do on that one? Topic. Here we go. Is in selected. Yep. We have to check if it's in selected questions. Check if question is in the topic. Selected questions array. const is in selected questions equals configuration object. This would kind of be redundant, because think about it. If we go through the topics and we iterate through all the questions in that one topic, then we're doing the same thing here twice. We're doing that twice. And the same can be said for when we edit a topic. Yeah, so I don't think that we need to do this check. Let's find out. I don't really think we need to do that check, because then we would have to basically do things twice. What I mean by that is that you're in your configuration, we're already going and iterating through each one of these topics, and then we're iterating through each one of the items that are questions, and it'd be pretty ridiculous to have to do that to check if the question is there, and then to have to do it again when we prior to doing the update. There's no point in doing that. It's kind of a waste of time. So now let's test it out. So now if I select all of my topics and then go to my questions, and I select the question, select this question, and I edit this, and I put another couple of question marks, and it works. Here's where I think it's gonna break. If I get rid of these, it didn't break. Oh, it didn't break because if we look at our store, we're replacing the entire question. And the question is going to have a new e tag. That's why it doesn't error out. So we're good there. Pretty cool. I like that. So if I modify this, submit it, edit this one, and I submit it, everything's working. Awesome. So now if I go to preview, you can see my extra question marks are there. And apparently I didn't select anything for development. So now if I go to development, you can see my questions. I hadn't added them. This is awesome. The next thing we have to do is we have to work on the responsive setup in the preview section. So 2 columns still looks okay. This looks okay as well. That looks okay as well. This looks good. Finally, the image layout still looks good too. Let's go back. It changes the 3 columns. Oh boy. We have our image FAQs. Still look okay. The list layout looks okay, and the accordion layout, I think this is going to be problematic because we're using tabs, and if the tabs if we have like 3 or 4 tabs, well then guess what? Houston, we have a problem. Also, this pill scenario is not working in the single column layout. What was that? Somebody was over there by my fireplace. That was my niece. Yeah, so we need to fix the responsive selectors. So this, I think, once we switch away from the 2 column to the single column, these need to change to icons. And also, whenever it's in the 2 column or the 1 column, put the image next to them, right? So let's work on that. So for the responsive design, I've been actually getting help from I've been getting help from UI from AI. And so AI is going to help me with this preview section so that when I select a different layout, we can change this. And I believe this component is the hill. Okay, so similar how we changed Dapper to have a different design in the 1 column layout. We need to change that for pill. We need to add an icon next to the name. Ooh. Sorry, it's been a long day. We need to add an icon next to the name. And so the names we have right now is tabbed, which should use let's go in here. Icon fill name to icon name. Tab should be tabbed. Influent UI. And then we have, what else do we have? Accordion. Accordion. What most resembles an accordion? Maybe this. No. It could be used for accordion. Trying to think of what we can use for accordion here. Autofill. Let's use this for accordion. So accordion is going to use this. What's the next thing we have? List. I know that there's one for list. Let's just say this. We can always change it later. Because we have list layout. We have tab layout. And then we have image layout. So we have image layout. And so the image layout, we're going to use something like this right here. We are working on the preview. I think it's called preview. Yep. TSX to make an update to the pill so that we can show the icon when the screen is reduced to one column, like we did for the topics and questions. If we can handle all to include I am concerned about I'm concerned about the tabs. There is also in the tab section, I am wondering if I should limit the amount of tabs that are visible when in the single column view. For example, if the topics are not too long and we can fit where the topics exceed 2 and we are on one column, then we would need to restrict it because the tabs text would not be legible. Also, if there are two, also if the text is too long for the tab width to be acceptable, we'd have to update the text with an ellipsis indicating I need to hover to see the entire text. We're planning right now. Ask any clarifying questions. What are your suggestions for this change? Essentially what I'm saying is if we look here, you notice that when I change the layout of the section to 3 columns, you see how this changes into icons only. I need that same scenario to play out with these tabs. Also, what I'm basically saying is if the user says, hey, I want this to be in a tabbed motion or tabbed scenario, if they add a 3rd tab, it's going to be problematic. And also, if the text in the tab is too long, that's going to be problematic as well. So we would behoove us to have maybe an ellipsis letting the user know, hey, there's not having to reduce it to 1 tab, but basically showing that 1 tab with an ellipsis on the text, letting the user know, hey, you have to hover. 9 times out of 10, the user's going to see that and they're going to be like, I don't like the way that looks, and they're going to change the layout to something bigger. You know, they'll probably come in here and say, yeah, I don't like the way that accordion looks with the tabs over it. So I'm going to opt for coming in here and changing it to the 2 column or 3 column, or 1 column, depending on how many tabs they have, right? In an ideal world, you would have users that would do that. So that's what. When single column layout, do you want the pills to option A show icon only? Option A. This is for number 1. 2. Tab layout topic restriction. Option A, show only the first 2 tabs. Hide others completely. I hadn't thought about that. We can actually technically put a more overflow menu. But I just don't like the way that that's gonna honestly look. I don't think that that's gonna look right. I don't like the way that's gonna look. We do that way. So I think there should be option A. Only show the 2 and hide the others. And then for the 3, only on a single column view, unless they are all too long. And I have a chat on YouTube. I'm coding SharePoint framework development. So basically I'm creating a Webpart for SharePoint that allows the user to come in here and select from various versions or various ways of seeing an FAQ Webpart. So they first select the topics that they want to be able to see, and they can edit, delete, shift them around by using these buttons to move them up and down. The same thing for questions. So they have a selector for questions and they can move questions up and down. They can select all the questions if they wish to do so. They can remove them all and only select a couple of them. And then they finally have an option to preview them. So this is just the configuration part. They can select the different views. And when they publish the page, this is what they're going to see. They're going to see the 2 topics with the expandable questions on them. So they have all these different options to have visibility to their FAQ web part. So that's basically what we're building. We're on the configuration side. We're nearly done. Right now I'm working on the responsive design. So the responsive design, you notice that right here it has the name of the step and an icon. So if I switch this to 3 columns, now it only shows the icon. It doesn't show me the name anymore. So similar to how we have this responsive design here, we need to incorporate that same responsive design here in this section. So that's what I'm working on right now. Essentially, we want to do the same thing that we did here for these pills. We want to change it to where we only have an icon visible if the page is shrunk, the column is shrunk. Because right now when I switch this to 3 columns, it's cut off. And I want them to be limited. So right here, if they add another topic and you're in the single column, then I'm going to limit your topics to 2 because there's no room. You know, if you want more topics, then you're going to have to work with a wider column configuration. And then once we're done with that, all the responsive design parts, we will work on the. Thank you. Yeah, I want to. So there's this channel that this chef, his name is Joshua Weissman, and it's funny because he goes to restaurants and he's a chef. He goes to restaurants and he finds like a thing that he wants to cook and make it better. So I think going forward, if I don't start gaming or like building games, because I was thinking of also doing some game development using Phaser. If I don't start that, what I'm probably gonna do next project is I'm gonna go into the store. I'm gonna go here into the store. If you go here and you select a new app, you can go to the store, and basically I'm just gonna pick one. I'm gonna pick something that looks interesting, that I can feel that I can make better. So there's from the SharePoint store, I want to go into the SharePoint store and say, you know what? How about this help desk system? We watch the video together, and we build out the architecture, and we decide if we can make it better, and then go for it. Try to make it better, and see how it works. I think this is like just me doing fun things, and at the same time you get to see the ideas behind how we go about being a developer. In my case, being a SharePoint developer, I'm taking some of the full stack developer methodologies and showing you how you can incorporate those into SharePoint framework development. Because what I do whenever I'm developing is I'll break the app into 3 pieces. You have obviously the SharePoint piece, right? So you have SharePoint, and then you have 4 pieces. So you have SharePoint, then you have your API layer. Let's make these a little bit smaller. You have your API layer. I should have moved that in there. And then you have your data layer. And then finally, you have your user interface, your UI. Okay, so this is the way we let me see if I can move this over. Can I move this over? I'm so new at this Excalibur thing, but anyway, my whole scenario is you have your backend, your SharePoint. You build your API layer, basically all of your calls, everything that you want your API to do, and then you have your data layer. So your data layer is where all your data is cached, all the information is cached, and then finally you have the UI, which is what the user sees. So I'm trying to establish this reusable methodology of development when you're doing your development inside of SharePoint. If you follow these same steps, technically, I mean, if you have even one web part that you do this way, you can even tell, you can tell AI following the same pattern, because this is the pattern, and I think this is a good pattern to follow. Because even then you can tell AI, hey, based on this pattern, I need you to do this, this, and that. And AI will actually read your documentation. Now, I don't say to trust AI, because if you watch any of my streams, there's plenty of times when you will see me go back and correct AI, because AI does make mistakes. It's normal. What I rely heavily on AI for is my responsive design, CSS design, and elements. I rely on it for that. But as far as the architecture, the the different layers of the application, as that I don't recommend you rely too much on AI. It's good to leverage it, because I use Copilot and I use Claude, and I use them interchangeably, or sometimes I'll use them against each other to kind of get an idea of what both can help me with, and then I check in my code, I let it do its thing, and then I go back and read through it. And so if anything, if I could tell you, is nowadays with AI, I think what you really want to focus on is architecture. And because if you focus on architecture, then you're not going to have applications that are going to be detrimental to the users, that people are not going to want to use. And that's going to make you a powerful developer. I mean, I promise you that's going to be the thing that businesses are going to want now, is because now you have AI, which is your helper, your junior developer, your designer. But what's going to come into the big bucks, if you will, is being an architect, making sure that these solutions are architectured in a way that users will want to use your product. But I've been rambling, so let me go back to where I was at. Only a single column view unless they are all too long, and no, I don't think so. Only a single column view, because the plan is to limit topics to 5. So ultimately, just a query that how to code in AI era. The way you want to code in the AI era is you want to put in. So if you look at my structure, let me just answer this question, and I'll touch on that. So let me just finish this part with the AI prompt, and then I'll touch on that. So now, and I'm gonna put on here, don't implement this change yet, or don't implement it at all. I can implement it. So icon size, placement in pills. Should pill icons be inside the pill? Icons should be inside, I think. Make them 56 pixels because that is good for mobile design. So there's industry standards. So the industry standard, I believe, is 56 pixels whenever you change these things. So that's what I'm just basically telling it. Change them to 56 pixels. Should the previous section pills follow the exact same pattern as the stepper navigation? I can only win. Yes. So the answer to question number 5 is yes. Okay, so right now I have it in plan mode. So it's gonna take a minute to go through what I just told it. So going back to your question about coding in the AI era, one of the things that I do is I include a Claude project README. Instead of having to explain to AI every single time, because here's what I find that developers do a lot. Like they'll tell AI, don't make any changes to the code until I tell you to do so. And the very next prompt, you tell AI something and it changes your code. And that is the most annoying thing ever, because you can tell it within the context of this chat. Like we're just talking right now. Like I could tell you as a human being, hey, right now, we're not talking about AI, let's stay on the topic, right? And you would understand, hey, I'm not going to talk about AI, and then the rest of the stream, you wouldn't be asking me about AI. Unfortunately, AI, I can tell it, hey, don't make this change right now, or don't make this change. Don't make any changes throughout this whole chat. I just want to talk. Do the rubber duck effect, right? Like in programming, we have the rubber duck, right? This is the old school way of this is the old AI, right? We would sit there and we would chat. We would talk to this rubber duck and just tell it, hey, like, just talk things through and just get ideas and work out the problems. Because as you would be talking to the duck, you would get your questions answered. Like you would answer your own questions. And so with AI, you want to include something like this, because this is going to give it a certain metric, a certain level of understanding on your project. And it's always going to reference this and keep it in memory as it's helping you through your project. So one of the things that I include here is I include the color palette for SharePoint development. So in SharePoint, we have SharePoint framework styles. Okay, so no, not that one. SPFx. This one right here. So here in this one, there's a whole bunch of, out of SharePoint documentation that tells you if you want your Webpart, when the user comes in here and says, I want to change the look. So if I go here to change the look, and I go to theme and I use this yellow, it changes it, right? So if I change it to a different theme, I go back to my main theme, it changes it. You want to do these things, but you want to have AI know this is how I want you to code my styles. And I rely on AI to do a lot of my styling. And so I tell it, this is the example usage. So if we go to any of my SCSS files, so let's say I go to, list question answer, you notice that all of my styles will have a theme around it. And why is that important? Because if I don't do that and I hard code colors, when the user changes the look and feel of the SharePoint site, they're going to be like, this doesn't look right. I changed the color of the theme on my site, but my web part's still reflecting the same thing. So then that's why I include this Claude README file, so that it knows this is how I want you to write my styles for colors. And this is the palette that I want you to use, and don't deviate from that. Another thing that I tell it is, and I can't take credit for this, This is something that I learned from his name is Kevin Pollak. He's a TypeScript guru on YouTube. You should check out his channel. I love watching his channel. I've learned a lot from him, and full credit to him when it comes to TypeScript. Like, I've learned a lot of things about TypeScript, and I like the way he explains things. But anyway, basically this is just telling Claude that whenever we're having a discussion, whenever we're doing planning, like you saw me do right now, go ahead and be kind of to the point. Like, I don't want you to don't write me a novel, right? Don't write me a novel. And even if grammar is not the most perfect, just go ahead and sacrifice that. I'll understand what you're saying. This has been very helpful to me because it knows to just summarize things rather than telling me a whole story about just the one question that I asked. So include a README file and include these kind of things. The next thing that I also do is I'll also add my architecture. I add a note on what my architecture is like. So what you saw me draw here in Excalidraw, I'm essentially putting this in words for AI to understand and know that this is how I want this program to work. Okay. And sometimes what I'll do is, while I'm going through the progression of planning and I've set up the plan a certain way with it, remember talking to the rubber duck AI, once I've given AI my thoughts and we've had a back and forth, I'll have it added to the architecture, because that way I don't have to re-say that every single time. So the architecture right now for this solution, it includes two lists, which is your list for the questions and the list for the topics. They didn't have to be that complex, but I made it that complex so that this is a good way of learning. I don't call these tutorials. These are not tutorials. Don't take them as tutorials. This is not for you to memorize code. Never memorize code. Memorization comes from coding. Just pick a project and start working a project. And the only thing I can give you as far as feedback from tutorials is, don't go and watch a tutorial and with the intent of memorizing it. Say for instance, I gave you a job working at a tire replacement store. You're not gonna sit there and write down every single vehicle and every single tire size. No, you're not gonna do that. That would be dumb. Why would you want to memorize that? Would you be able to memorize it with time? Of course. Why? Because you do it every day, all the time. Eventually, you're going to get to know the car, the make. You're going to be able to look at the car and know, oh, that's this kind of car. But that's just going to come with time. You don't sit there. So whenever somebody comes into work at the tire shop, it'd be pretty dumb for somebody to tell you, you need to memorize every single car, every single tire size, every single wheel size. And different cars have different wheel sizes. Same cars have different wheel sizes. It would be incredibly ridiculous for me to ask you to do that. So when you do a tutorial, learn the concepts. Do not memorize the tutorial. The intent of you watching the tutorial is just to get clarity. So he's lifting the car, and then he's loosening the lug nuts first. Then he lifts the car, then he removes the lug nuts, after removes the wheel. You're learning the concepts. You're learning, patterns and practices from developers. Don't watch these videos with the intent of memorization. That memorization will come as you build things. Learn the concepts. That's what I was telling you. This is the concept. The concept is we structure our application to fall into different pieces. Think of the car as SharePoint. The tire, the rubber part is your API, or the lug nuts, what connects it to the car is the API. Your data is the air in the tires, right? And then the UI is how the tire looks on the car when the customer drives off on it. And so that's the generic concepts. That's the generic concepts. And so once you have these things laid out, you tell it the list, the entities, the views, how it's going to function, and then your tech stack is very important. The tech stack is very important because that way it knows what technology you're working with. Why is that important? Because if you don't tell it your tech stack, then it could try to import other kinds of things that you don't really want into your solution. And it becomes very messy. So for instance, if I don't tell it I'm using Zustan, or if I don't tell it I'm using Yup for validation, and then I tell it, okay, go ahead and build the validation file for this form, and then it tries to use Zod instead of Yup, because I already set up Yup as my validation, then it becomes counterintuitive. I have a solution where now I have so many different pieces of so many different libraries, and now I'm having to basically clean that mess, and so you want to avoid those kind of scenarios. So always do this in your AI. That way AI knows what to stick to. And then there's going to be occasions that it'll tell you, like, maybe it'd be better if you incorporate X. Do you want me to install that package for X? You can say, no, I don't want that. I look at my solution and I already have a tech stack picked out. I don't want you to change my tech stack. Unless you can always ask the question, like, is there not a better way? Here's one of the illustrations that I tell people a lot is, because we have the AI is not generative AI that we have right now, meaning it cannot, like, if you ever look at art, it can't generate very good art because it doesn't have the capacity. It just basically copies existing things out there. And so if you tell AI, hey, I want you to build me a truck, what AI will do, in my opinion, and this is a hot take, but this is what AI will do. Let me just give you an example. I tell it to, I want a truck, and then it'll do what this. Let's say this. Let me get rid of that. Let's look at a truck images, and so it'll take this, right, and let's just say, for instance, this, hypothetically speaking. So it takes the truck, okay, being set in here, and then it knows the truck needs wheels, so it'll say wheels, or tires and wheels for truck, okay, and then it'll say, okay, well, so I know it needs a wheel, and then this is essentially what's going to happen. It's going to take that truck, and it takes this truck right here, and it takes the wheel. Oops, let me see if I can get closer to it. Obviously, this is a bit of an exaggeration, but, like, you see this? Okay. And, I mean, it looks like a truck, right? But it's not what you would think of, and of course I'm being facetious a little bit on this. It doesn't necessarily go and do that. But what I'm saying is that when it comes to code, it does. So the other day I asked it to with regards to responsive design, it was like, oh, I can create a page, a page element, and I can look at the DOM, and then if the DOM changes, I can create a function that sniffs out that change, and then when that sniffs it out, then we can make. I was like, why are you gonna do that? You're building element. You're building methods that don't need to be there. Why? Because you can just traverse the DOM and see what class is the parent, and so you don't have to do all this extravagant work. Like, sometimes I feel like it builds spaghetti code, and that spaghetti code is just unnecessary, and it's not something that you wanted in the first place. So don't don't always rely on it understanding. So that would be my take on it, is make sure that you always outline this scenario so that it knows this is how we work together, this is how we develop together, these are what I want you to keep in mind, for lack of a better way of explaining it. This is the things that I want you to keep in mind while we're doing the development, and I don't want you to deviate from these presets. Okay. And right now, like, it should be following. Right now, I'm letting it do the changes that I wanted to the responsive design of the preview. Again, that's really what I rely on it for. Occasionally, I'll use the predictive text from Copilot. That's really helpful because it shortens my, like, I know and I can read what it's doing. And then I can just determine whether or not I can, it is done correctly or not. So I hope that I know I rambled on a lot. I hope that answers the question, but I mean, it was something good to talk about while we waited for AI to do its thing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. So right now, let me go to my topics, add all my topics, add a couple of questions in here for each one of the topics. Close this tool bar and let's go to the preview. You can see my questions. Oh, I like the way these pills look. They look a lot better. And check this out. So if I go to this layout, that looks awesome. I think that the icons could be made obviously smaller. They're way too, they need to be made perhaps about this size. Because we want to, that size. I think it's, even though I said 56 pixels, I don't think it did 56 pixels. Because those are like, I mean, you look at a human thumb. That's, if we were to see this on a mobile layout, it would not look normal. But overall, I mean, I think this is something that we can use, right? Like, this looks a lot better. This looks a lot better from a responsive design, which is essentially what we wanted to do. And we can inspect this and make adjustments here. So on the pill button, inline flex, display, oh wait, no, that's not this right here. It should be, nope. What are we doing here? Layout pill. Obviously, these are way too large. Let's go look and see. So it's called layout pill. Layout pill. Selector pills, 16 pixels, margin bottom 24 pixels. So the gap is concerning. Maybe the gap should be half of what it is. So let's change that to 8 pixels. Okay, so we go to our topics. We add, actually we need to change those. This is how it works in development, if I'm being completely frank with you. Selected questions, available questions. We have the 2 questions there. And then how many? Oh, we selected all the questions. Oh no, we only selected questions is 2. We don't have any. We can select all of them for this one. And then if we go to the preview, okay, the gap's a little bit adjusted, but this is still not ideal. SPFx, layout selector pills. That's fine. Oh, take off flex wrap from layout selector pills. Layout selector pills. Flex wrap, take that off. And now let's take a look at what we have. We add our topics, add all of them. Go to our questions. We can add a couple of questions on each topic. Available questions. Okay, so now we go to preview. That looks a lot better, but the icons still look pretty big. I definitely think that needs to change. I think that this is what's causing the issue. So I bet you it's anything like, nope, that's fine at 72 where it was. We had said 52 and it put it to somewhere between 70 and 60. But 52 would look better. See, 52 by 52 on the layout pill. So on the layout pill, here we can do max height 52 pixels, max width 52 pixels. Let's see what that does for us. So we go to topics, we add all of our topics, we add a couple of questions. Again, more than likely your users are not going to do this, but we plan for everything. Plus, it's a good learning opportunity. I mean, most of your users are going to use it in this manner. Okay. So then we go to preview. Here's our questions. Oh, this looks way off. This does not look good. I messed up something here. What did I change? Because it was 16 pixels before. I wouldn't have changed it anyway. Display flex. Space in between would probably help there. Yeah, we can do that. Let's try that. So this is on the layout selector pills. And that was justify content space around. Or actually, well, maybe space around or space between. We go to our topics, add all of our topics. We had a couple of questions here. Add all our questions there. That looks better than if I make it. That looks good too. I like it. That'll work. Two columns looks like trash. Yep. We'll fix it tomorrow. Today I think I'm done. I'm tired. But it was fun. This is what I love to do. I from experience, I can tell that this is, I love my job. I love what I do for a living. I know it may seem boring to a lot of folks, but this is a lot of fun to me. This is like my video game. Um, and I like to sit in code and look at the fireplace. If this has helped you in any way, please give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Check out some of my videos. I am going to be posting more videos. Going over concepts, not tutorials, concepts. And go from there. I think that's going to be it, folks. Thank you for joining me. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.